The cafe hummed with chaos. Aliens of all shapes and sizes crowded the narrow tables, arguing over glowing drinks and flickering holoscreens. Steam hissed from the kitchen vents, mixing with the sharp tang of fried synth meat. Mara's tray wobbled in her hands as she weaved between tall, clawed patrons. A sharp clang behind her made her spin, heart leaping. An entire tray of drinks toppled, spraying a mix of liquids onto the floor. Her first instinct was to snap at the clumsy patron, but then she saw him. A small figure crouched in the shadowed corner behind a crystal column, barely more than a child. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and faint, silvery scales ran along his arms and temples. Tiny ridges curved along his skull, subtle enough that most people wouldn't notice. But Mara did. She stopped dead in her tracks. Before she could think, the drunken alien barreled past the corner, knocking over a chair. The boy flinched violently, pressed himself against the wall. Without a second thought, Mara lunged, grabbing his arm and pulling him behind a support beam. The alien barely glanced at him and stumbled on, grumbling. The child's eyes, large, luminous, and impossibly calm, locked on hers. There was fear there, yes, but also recognition, as if he understood something no one else did. Mara swallowed hard, her pulse still racing. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered, though she didn't know if he could hear her. He tilted his head, watching her, his small hands trembling. She saw the faintest movement. He mimicked the way she held her tray, slowly copying her stance. Curiosity prickled through her. No one else had noticed him. Everyone else had ignored him. Her next thought was instinctive. She pulled a small tray of synth fruits from the counter and slid it toward him. The child's eyes widened. He didn't speak. He didn't reach for it right away. Mara held her hand out, encouraging, showing no threat. After a tense moment, he took a single piece, examining it like it might explode, then finally bit down and chewed cautiously. A small, silent laugh escaped him, so soft it almost went unnoticed. Mara smiled, heart swelling. It was a tiny victory, but it mattered. "See? You're safe here," she said softly. No one was paying attention to her, but the sense of isolation made the moment more intense. She could feel his trust growing, even as the station continued its chaotic rhythm around them. Something about this boy was extraordinary, but what? A sudden vibration rattled the floor. The cafe lights flickered. Mara froze, her hand still hovering near him. A low metallic hum filled the air. She scanned the room. The patrons were oblivious, engrossed in their own arguments and holoscreens. But she knew. Something big was coming. She didn't know what it was, but instinct screamed at her to protect him. "Stay behind me," she whispered, crouching so her shoulders shielded his small frame. The child hesitated, then leaned slightly closer. He was silent, but Mara could feel a presence, an awareness, almost like a heartbeat syncing with hers. She had no idea what kind of creature he was, but she knew he needed her and she would not fail him. A sharp clatter from the ceiling vent made both of them jump. Dust fell, scattering across the floor. Mara's mind raced. The boy's head tilted, listening, or watching something invisible. His eyes flicked to her, bright with an intelligence she couldn't name. Then for the first time she felt it, a voice in her mind. A whisper, faint and trembling but unmistakable. "Listen." Mara froze, blinking. Had she imagined it? Her hand instinctively reached out to his arm. He didn't pull away. Instead, he pressed slightly into her, and the whisper repeated, stronger this time, tinged with urgency. "Listen." The cafe's chaos seemed to fade around them. The boy's eyes shone, almost pleading. Mara realized in that instant, this was no ordinary child. He was something far more, something dangerous if mishandled, yet fragile, alone, and misunderstood. Her heart pounded, not with fear but determination. She would protect him. Somehow she would understand him. Somehow she would make sure no one else hurt him. A sudden crash from the back of the cafe snapped her attention. A group of armored enforcers had entered, scanning the crowd. Their eyes locked onto the boy. Mara's stomach dropped. They didn't see him as a child. They saw a threat. And if they noticed her, she would be their obstacle. Mara grabbed his small hand, squeezing it gently. "We move now," she whispered. She didn't wait for consent. The moment demanded action. They slipped behind a storage stack, weaving through the shadows, hearts racing. The boy followed her every move, silent but attentive, his presence almost like a living radar. The enforcer's footsteps echoed closer. Mara's mind raced for a plan. Every instinct told her this was only the beginning. The boy's safety, and perhaps more, rested entirely on her courage and quick thinking. Then, just as she rounded the corner to a narrow service corridor, A low mechanical rumble vibrated through the floorboards beneath them. Something massive moved unseen in the depths of the station. Mara froze. The boy glanced up at her, eyes wide, shimmering. His lips moved slightly, forming a single word, but she didn't hear it. Instead, it echoed in her mind, "Run." And that word made everything crystal clear. Nothing in the station, or the galaxy, was going to make this easy. Mara pressed the boy closer, her mind racing as the low hum of the massive machine beneath the station vibrated through the floor. The service corridor was narrow and dimly lit, lined with pipes and vents. Shadows moved strangely along the walls, stretching like dark fingers. She could hear the distant chatter of patrons and the clanging of trays, but it all felt muffled, distant, as if the world had narrowed to just her and the boy. "Stay close," she whispered, gripping his small hand. He followed without hesitation, his tiny claws brushing against hers. His eyes darted nervously to every shadow, every flicker of light, and she realized he understood danger in ways most humans couldn't. Mara had never seen anyone so attuned to the smallest details, not even trained security officers. Ahead, the corridor split into two narrow paths. One led toward a service elevator, the other, a spiral stairwell that vanished into darkness. She hesitated. The elevator might be faster, but it was monitored by cameras. The stairwell was risky, old, unstable, but it offered cover. Her gut told her the boy's safety was more important than speed. She led him toward the stairwell, feeling every creak of the metal steps beneath their feet. His grip on hers tightened, but he didn't resist. Mara noticed a small, faint glow along the back of his neck, a thin, silvery line that pulsed with each step. She didn't understand it, but it seemed connected to his emotions. Fear made it flicker rapidly, calm made it steady. A sudden sound froze them both. A sharp metallic clang echoed from above. Mara ducked instinctively, pulling the boy behind a vent pipe. Shadows danced across the walls as a tall, armored figure stepped into the corridor, scanning with a weapon that hummed faintly. Mara's heart slammed in her chest. This wasn't a random enforcer. This was trained, and they had come for the boy. She could hear the boy's shallow breathing, almost synchronized with her own. He raised a small hand toward her, and for the first time she felt a pulse of something she couldn't explain. A connection, a mental nudge, guiding her. Mara realized he could sense danger before it fully manifested, a human-level intuition amplified somehow. Thinking fast, she grabbed a loose panel from the wall, holding it like a shield. As the enforcer approached, she kicked a small pipe down the corridor, clanging loudly. The figure turned reflexively, scanning for the source of the noise. Mara seized the moment, pulling the boy along the shadowed path, hearts pounding with each step. They ducked into a storage room filled with crates of supplies. The boy pressed himself into a corner, and Mara crouched beside him, quickly scanning the crates. One held a jumble of old cleaning tools, brooms, mops, and a discarded pressure sprayer. Mara grabbed it, shaking it slightly. "We can use this," she whispered. The boy's glowing line pulsed in agreement, a faint smile flickering across his face. From the vent, the enforcer's footsteps grew louder. Mara held her breath. She motioned for the boy to stay still, then tested the pressure sprayer. A quick push sent a jet of scalding steam shooting into the narrow corridor. The enforcer yelped, stumbling backward, pulling out a scanner to assess the damage. Mara's heart raced. That small, improvised trick had bought them precious seconds. The boy stepped forward cautiously, pointing at a vent cover high above. Mara squinted. He tugged at her sleeve, then mimed climbing. Her eyes widened. Could he? He nodded, encouraging her to lift him. His small size allowed him to slip through the vent, and she realized that was their best chance. Carefully, she hoisted him up, his claws gripping the metal grate, and then followed, squeezing herself through the narrow space. Inside the vent, the world smelled of dust, metal, and something faintly sweet, synthetic flowers from the cafe's air filtration system. It was dark, cramped, and uncomfortable, but Mara felt a rush of relief. The boy looked at her, eyes wide but calm. He reached out and she felt the faintest mental nudge again. This way. He guided her through twists and turns she couldn't see clearly, his small hands moving with precision over obstacles. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the vent opened onto a maintenance corridor far from the main cafe. Mara slid out, her body stiff and aching, but the boy's presence gave her a surge of energy. She noticed faint markings along the walls, tiny claw scratches forming symbols. The boy traced them lightly with his fingers, and Mara realized he was leaving a trail, perhaps for his own escape or to signal someone. A distant alarm sounded, a low, continuous wail. The enforcer hadn't given up. Mara's mind raced. She needed a plan and fast. She found a small service hatch leading to the station's less-traveled lower decks. "This way," she whispered. The boy hesitated, then nodded, trusting her entirely. As they moved through the shadowed corridors, Mara thought about the boy's abilities. His awareness, his instincts, the way he seemed to communicate without words, it was extraordinary. She had protected many people before, but never anyone like this. Every step she took, every decision, carried weight far beyond her own life. Then a faint vibration shook the floor, stronger than before. Mara froze. The boy's eyes widened, shimmering with silver light. He pressed a small hand to her chest, almost like a warning. She followed his gaze and her stomach dropped. Through the maintenance window ahead, she saw movement, shapes too large to be human, gliding along the deck outside the station. Something massive was waiting, watching. The boy's glowing line pulsed violently, a silent alarm in itself. Mara swallowed hard, squeezing his hand. "Whatever that is, we face it together." He nodded slightly, and for the first time she felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. The vent hatch ahead led downward, deeper into the station. As they descended, the metallic hum grew louder and the shadows thickened. Mara realized that their escape had only just begun. The boy's safety depended on her courage, her intelligence, her quick thinking. And whatever waited for them outside, it wasn't going to be easy. Then, almost imperceptibly, she heard it. A soft, melodic vibration in her mind, the boy's voice again. "Not safe, not yet." Her heart pounded. Mara knew in that instant that this was only the beginning, and that the real danger was far larger than either of them had imagined. Mara's breath came in quick bursts as she led the boy down the narrow maintenance corridors, the shadows pressing close from every side. The faint hum beneath the station had grown into a steady, insistent vibration, like the heartbeat of something massive hidden deep within the structure. She kept her hand on the boy's small shoulder, feeling the subtle pulse of his own nervous energy. He was silent as always, but his glowing lines flickered faster now, a warning she could feel in her chest. They reached a junction where the corridor split again. The left path was dark and narrow, pipes running along the walls in a chaotic tangle. The right path sloped downward toward a hatch labeled, "Service Access, Restricted." Mara hesitated. The boy tugged lightly on her sleeve, pointing toward the hatch. His line pulsed steadily, a calm reassurance that this was the safer route. Mara took a deep breath and pushed open the hatch. A cold rush of recycled air met them, carrying faint mechanical smells and the sharp tang of metal. She could hear distant footsteps echoing behind them, the enforcers still searching. They were close. Too close. Mara's mind raced. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. The boy moved ahead, his small form gliding over grated flooring with uncanny precision. Mara followed, noticing the way he seemed to sense the layout, almost as if he could see invisible hazards and paths she couldn't. She had spent her life solving problems in high-pressure situations, but nothing prepared her for this. Nothing prepared her for someone who could think beyond the limits of humans, yet was still a child. A sudden clanging sound erupted from the level above them. Mara froze, pressing the boy against the railing. His lines pulsed brightly, faster than she'd ever seen. The enforcers had discovered their path. Mara's heart pounded. She couldn't outrun them, they were trained, heavily armed, and relentless. She had to use her wits. Glancing around, she spotted a series of power conduits running along the walls. Her mind raced. If she could disable the lighting along the corridor even briefly, she could create a distraction long enough to gain some distance. Mara tugged at the nearest conduit panel. Sparks flew, and the lights flickered violently before plunging the corridor into darkness. The boy stopped, then extended a hand toward her, guiding her silently through the shadows. Mara realized he wasn't just leading her. He was predicting the safest route, anticipating the enforcer's movements. Each step through the darkness brought a small, tense victory, a proof that human courage and quick thinking combined with his abilities could overcome seemingly impossible odds. They reached a maintenance room stacked with crates and barrels. Mara pulled the boy behind them, listening. The enforcer's footsteps were louder now, and a scanner beam swept the corridor outside. She could feel the tension radiating from the boy, his pulsing lines spiking as the threat drew nearer. "Stay still," she whispered. The boy nodded, pressing himself flat against the crates. Mara spotted a small service panel low on the wall. If she could manipulate the power lines again, she might create a temporary electromagnetic pulse to confuse their sensors. Hands shaking, she adjusted the connections and sparks arced across the panel. A low hum rose, followed by a blackout in the corridor beyond. A muffled shout from outside told her it worked. Mara's chest heaved, relief mixing with adrenaline. The boy's lines returned to a calm glow, and he pressed his tiny hand to her forearm. She felt a faint mental whisper again, safe, for now. Mara glanced at him, the child who had been silent until now, and realized something profound. He wasn't mute. He communicated differently, telepathically, perceiving emotions and intentions in ways humans couldn't. That explained the whispers in her mind, the nudges guiding her actions. He had been trying to tell her something important all along. Her curiosity and determination spiked. "Can you show me?" she whispered, not knowing if he could hear her or if her words were just for herself. The boy's lines pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Slowly, he moved a small hand, tracing the metal floor with careful, precise motions. Mara leaned closer and saw patterns forming, symbols etched lightly into dust and scratches on the metal. He was mapping the station, marking paths, exits, and hazards. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow slid across the far wall, too fast to be human. Mara froze. The boy's glowing lines flared again, a warning she felt more than saw. Something was approaching from outside the station, something enormous, moving with purpose. Mara's stomach dropped. She had suspected the enforcers were dangerous, but this was different. The boy's hand brushed hers again, and she felt a pulse of information, a direction. Deeper into the station, toward a hidden service shaft few people used. Mara nodded, determination hardening. Whatever was out there, they would face it together. She lifted the boy gently and guided him toward the narrow shaft, her mind calculating every risk, every possible outcome. As they squeezed through the tight passage, Mara glanced back. The enforcers were not far behind, their footsteps echoing through the corridors. The boy's pulse quickened and she felt the mental nudge again, urgent, insistent. She realized they were not just running for survival, they were on the edge of something far bigger, something the boy had been trying to reveal all along. The shaft led them to a dimly lit observation deck, far from the bustling cafe. Mara pushed the door open and they stepped out into the open space, the station sprawling beneath them. The boy's eyes widened at the view, shimmering with silver light. His glowing lines pulsed steadily, a mixture of fear and awe. Mara's chest tightened. She had learned something vital in these few minutes. The boy was extraordinary, and together they could face dangers no human alone could survive. But the distant hum beneath the station grew louder, vibrating through the floor, and the shadow of something massive drifted across the observation windows. The boy pressed a small hand to hers, whispering in her mind once more, faint but urgent, "Not safe, not yet." Mara's heart pounded. She realized their journey had only begun, and whatever waited in the depths of the station, it would test everything she thought she knew about courage, intelligence, and trust. Mara's pulse hammered in her ears as she led the boy across the observation deck, the cold metal under her boots slick with condensation. The hum beneath the station had grown into a deep vibration, like the growl of a slumbering beast. She tightened her grip on the boy's small hand, feeling the faint pulse of his glowing lines under her fingers. Every instinct screamed that danger was closing in, and she knew they couldn't run forever. The enforcers were relentless. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors below, metal clanking against metal. Mara had learned to anticipate their moves, using shadows, vents, and improvisation, but now the stakes were higher. The boy was different from anyone she had ever protected. His intelligence, his awareness, and the strange telepathic connection between them made him both precious and vulnerable. Mara had to act decisively, or they would both be captured. Ahead, the observation deck sloped down to a service dock, and beyond that, a massive shuttle bay. Mara could see the faint outline of their escape vessel, a small craft hidden behind stacks of cargo containers. But the path was exposed. Too much open space. Too many angles for their pursuers to spot them. She scanned the environment, thinking fast, calculating risk versus reward. "Stay close," she whispered, crouching low. The boy nodded, his glowing lines pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. Mara grabbed a loose maintenance panel and dragged it across the floor, creating a barrier between them and the path ahead. She then spotted a cluster of steam vents along the edges of the deck. A quick idea struck her. She pulled the boy behind a panel and gestured for him to stay still. With a deep breath, she activated the steam vents. Jets of scalding vapor shot upward, creating a dense, hissing fog that obscured the open space ahead. The enforcers would have trouble aiming, and their sensors could be confused by the heat and steam. Mara exhaled sharply. It was risky, but it might give them the edge they needed. The boy stepped forward, small and silent, his eyes scanning the fog. He raised a hand and she felt the faint mental nudge again guiding her movements. It was more than intuition. He was showing her where the hidden supports and weak points in the deck were. Mara followed his guidance, her confidence growing with each step. They moved faster, slipping between the crates and containers, the fog hiding them from the approaching enforcers. Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed nearby. Mara froze. One of the enforcers had stumbled into a container, alerting the others. She glanced at the boy who was already moving ahead, climbing nimbly onto a stack of cargo. His glowing lines pulsed with urgency. Mara followed, hoisting herself onto the crates, muscles straining as she balanced precariously. They had only seconds. From the shadows, a new threat appeared. A massive robotic sentinel, sleek and black, hovered silently above the deck, scanning with a red, glowing eye. Mara's stomach dropped. This wasn't a human enforcer. This was a predator designed for precision hunting. The boy's lines flickered wildly, and Mara felt the rush of his fear, his awareness of the danger far beyond her own senses. "Keep moving," she hissed, gripping his hand. The boy guided her toward a narrow catwalk along the edge of the bay. The metal grated beneath their feet, vibrations rattling through their bodies. Mara's mind raced. If they fell or if the sentinel detected them, it would be over in seconds. Her only chance was to use the environment against it. She spotted a stack of cargo crates above the bay and grabbed a metal beam. With a quick motion she tipped it, sending it clattering down toward the edge. Sparks flew as it struck the floor, causing the sentinel's sensors to flicker. Mara seized the moment, leading the boy across the catwalk, jumping onto the final stack of crates near the shuttle. The boy followed her without hesitation, landing softly beside her. They were almost there. Mara's heart pounded, adrenaline fueling her movements. She grabbed the shuttle's hatch, tugging it open, and felt a rush of relief as they slipped inside. The boy slid in ahead of her, pressing a small hand to the control panel. Mara realized he knew more than she had thought. His gestures, subtle and precise, activated hidden overrides, unlocking the ship for immediate launch. The hatch closed behind them, sealing out the chaos. Mara collapsed onto the floor, chest heaving, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The boy looked at her, eyes wide, glowing lines softening as he let out a small, silent laugh. She smiled, exhausted but triumphant. They had survived the chase for now. But their relief was short-lived. Through the viewport, Mara saw a shadow detach itself from the station structure. A massive alien dreadnought hovered in orbit, its weapons array glinting faintly. It was not here to chase them, it was here to claim the boy. Mara's stomach dropped. The real danger had only begun. The boy pressed a hand against the control panel, and Mara felt a whisper in her mind, "Prepare, ready." She realized he had been guiding them not just to escape, but to confront something far larger, far more dangerous. Her courage surged. She would not let fear paralyze her. She would act. The shuttle's engines ignited, shaking the small vessel. Mara gripped the controls, following the boy's subtle guidance. The station receded, the massive shadow of the dreadnought growing larger in the viewport. Every instinct screamed that they were outmatched, but Mara knew one truth: human determination, quick thinking, and the bond she shared with this extraordinary child could tip the scales. As the shuttle veered into the shadows of the station, Mara glanced at the boy. He looked back at her, eyes bright, lines pulsing steadily, conveying a silent promise. Together they could face the impossible. And then, from deep within the shuttle's hull, a vibration unlike any before rippled through the floor. The boy's glowing lines flared violently. Mara's stomach sank. Whatever they were heading toward, it was waiting for them. The real challenge had begun. Mara gripped the shuttle's controls tightly, her knuckles white. The hum of the engines vibrated through her, mingling with the faint pulse of the boy's glowing lines under her hand. He sat beside her, small and silent, but his awareness was sharp, his mind brushing against hers in fleeting whispers of guidance. Each flicker of his lines carried meaning, subtle instructions that kept them alive as the massive dreadnought loomed behind them in orbit, its shadow stretching across the station. Her mind raced. Every decision in the last hours had been a delicate balance between speed, stealth, and ingenuity. The boy's telepathic cues had guided her through traps and ambushes, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The dreadnought wasn't just a ship, it was a predator, a machine designed to capture or kill with perfect precision. Mara's heart pounded as she considered the impossible odds stacked against them. "Hold on," she whispered to the boy, more for herself than him. The shuttle lurched as she maneuvered past a cluster of cargo satellites orbiting the station. Tiny adjustments in the controls kept them from being detected by the dreadnought's scanning beams, but it was clear. It was following them, relentless and precise. The boy pressed a small hand to her arm and a soft mental whisper reached her. Safe, not yet. Must hide. Mara scanned the viewport. A narrow nebula field, faintly luminescent, stretched ahead. Its ionized gases could mask their energy signature, but navigating it required exact timing. One wrong move and they'd be exposed to the dreadnought's sensors or worse, the hidden defenses scattered among the debris. Mara adjusted the shuttle's trajectory, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She glanced at the boy. His lines pulsed with quiet encouragement. Somehow she drew strength from his trust. He had relied on her before, now she relied on him to guide the shuttle safely through the nebula. The shuttle shuddered as they entered the glowing clouds, visibility dropping to near zero. Mara followed the boy's subtle guidance. He was pointing, almost imperceptibly, to pockets of clearer space among the swirling gases. Each pulse of his lines was a mental nudge, telling her exactly when to adjust the thrusters, when to dive, when to bank sharply. It was uncanny, a partnership beyond words, yet flawless in execution. Suddenly, a sharp vibration ran through the shuttle. Mara's stomach dropped. From somewhere deep in the nebula, massive shadows moved, shapes too large to be debris. The dreadnought had deployed autonomous drones, sleek, black and deadly, designed to intercept them. The boy's lines pulsed violently now, warning her of immediate danger. Mara acted without hesitation. She hit the thrusters, swerving sharply, narrowly avoiding one drone as it fired a tracking beam. Sparks arced across the shuttle's hull and her chest tightened. The boy pressed a small hand to the control panel, sending a subtle signal through the shuttle's auxiliary systems. Lights flickered, momentarily disabling the drone's tracking mechanism. It was a tiny victory, but it bought them seconds that felt like lifetimes. She glanced at him. He looked up at her with eyes wide and shimmering, the faintest smile crossing his lips. Mara allowed herself a brief surge of hope. Together they could outthink the impossible. Her human ingenuity, combined with his extraordinary abilities, created a force neither the enforcers nor the dreadnought could predict. The nebula began to thin, and Mara could see distant asteroid fields glinting faintly in the starfield beyond. She guided the shuttle toward a narrow gap, the boy nudging her telepathically toward a safer path through the rocks. Each rock was a potential shield or a deadly obstacle. One miscalculation could tear the shuttle apart. Mara adjusted their course, using every ounce of focus, every split-second judgment, her courage shining in every maneuver. A sudden jolt threw her against the console. One of the drones had fired again, grazing the shuttle. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and she felt panic claw at her chest. The boy's hand pressed against hers again, steadying her. Focus, trust, came the faint mental whisper. Mara nodded, letting the bond between them guide her. She adjusted the thrusters, spiraling around the largest asteroid in the field, using it as cover. Finally, the drones lost visual, and the dreadnought's sensors struggled to track them through the dense debris. Mara exhaled sharply, chest heaving, and allowed herself a moment to glance at the boy. His lines glowed steadily now, calm, a subtle reward for their combined effort. She smiled at him, exhausted but triumphant. Not safe yet, he whispered in her mind again, faint but insistent. Mara's stomach tightened. There was more ahead, more danger, more discovery, but she felt a flicker of determination she hadn't known she possessed. She realized the truth. Human courage, intelligence, and compassion were what had carried them this far. And with the boy's extraordinary abilities, they were a force capable of facing even the impossible. She adjusted the shuttle's course again, aiming toward a hidden asteroid enclave the boy had indicated, a potential sanctuary far from immediate danger. As they approached, a glimmer of something unexpected appeared. Strange, crystalline structures embedded in the rocks, faintly pulsing with energy. Mara's curiosity spiked. What were these formations? Who, or what, created them? The boy's lines pulsed with recognition, but he said nothing, leaving the answer for later. The shuttle slipped into a small cavity, the asteroid looming around them like a protective shell. Mara exhaled, feeling the tension drain slightly. The dreadnought was still out there waiting, but for the first time she felt a measure of control, a foothold in the chaos. The boy's lines glowed steadily, almost proudly, and he pressed a hand to her arm as if to say, "We did it. Together." But even in that moment of quiet, Mara could feel it, an undercurrent of danger still lurking, secrets the boy had yet to reveal. Her mind raced with questions, but she pushed them aside. The immediate threat had passed, and they had survived what seemed impossible. As the shuttle powered down inside the asteroid enclave, the boy's eyes met hers. He whispered, this time in a voice she could hear aloud, "The real challenge begins now." Mara's heart skipped. She knew he was right. The dreadnought, the enforcers, and the mysteries of the boy's past were only the beginning. What lay ahead would test her courage, her mind, and her heart in ways she could not yet imagine. And somewhere deep in the asteroid, hidden among the crystalline formations, a faint energy pulsed, waiting. A signal that promised secrets far greater than the station, far beyond their current understanding. Mara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her. The boy's safety and perhaps much more rested entirely in her hands. She looked at him resolute. Then we face it, together. The shuttle hummed quietly in the asteroid's shadow, but beyond, the galaxy waited, full of danger, secrets, and challenges yet to come. The story was far from over.